what were some of the most challenging experiences, other than saying the word challenging? What is some of the most challenging experiences that you've had in broadcasting, and how did you work your way out of it? Okay. Yeah, I love this one because, yeah, as mentioned earlier, you've got to take the time to reflect on some of the awesome things that you've done. But let's be honest, it's the incredibly bad ones, bad experiences, which you also don't forget, but you find a way to get your way through the maze and learn your way through it. So here's some ones that I've had, some curly ones, and I'm very interested to hear from your feedback in the future about some of the bad ones that you've had. So the first one I'm going to look at, I'm going to cast the way back to the RDFNL, the Riddle District Football Netball League Grand Final. I can't remember if it was 2012 or 2011, going back way back then. When we talk about the phone line situation, bad internet. It was a grand final over at Lancefield. It was Romsey and the Sunbury Kangaroos. I can't remember which one. They fought two classics back to back. I mean, there's been a few grand finals that I've had the privilege of calling since then. But we called the under 18s and reserves. And you think about the internet at the best of times when you've got so many people. Like if you've gone to a sporting event, we'll say MCG, even when you go to Suncorp Stadium, Accor Stadium, the big ones that hold 50,000 plus, and you're all jumping on your phones and your internet's going super slow. So you're trying to fight for that limited space. All right. So this particular grand final, we had the internet going. I think we were with a particular telco that everyone just happened to be on. We didn't get much traffic because the crowd wasn't as big during the under 18s and reserves. But come to seniors, we had problems, didn't we? We were fighting for the same space using our mixer, producing very, very minimal data compared to your average smartphone, particularly back then, more than a decade ago. So we were stuck in the same bit of highway, so to speak. It was chaos with the traffic. So we were getting dropouts galore. So what did we do for the first quarter of the senior grand final? There was 5 of us there while the great man Gary the Magician Matthews on Highlands FM was trying to find a solution. I called the first quarter of the senior men's grand final off a mobile phone. And unfortunately, I didn't really get a chance to bring many of the other teammates in because I was sitting on the fence, and you have to be a little bit impartial when it comes to calling, let's be honest. But I was sitting on the fence, and we were trying to find solutions to make sure that our internet could somehow get going. So I called the first quarter off a mobile phone, and then we struck gold. We were able to transfer to another network that wasn't as busy, and the final 3 quarters were able to bring the whole team in. So I think it was just one of those things where you had to roll with the flow. And so calling it off a mobile phone, just holding it up to my earpiece, well, actually probably flicking it upside down and talking to it very much like you're holding a microphone or drinking a beverage. Now, so how did I work my way out of it? Well, there was a perfect solution for that. Being on the mobile phone helped, and eventually we got through. Fast track probably 10 years later. And I'm the one that's somewhat the person in charge in the tech space, or at least from the panel operating space for SEN, because I was working a game for the NTFL, the Northern Territory Footy League, with Shannon Burns and the team up there, and they had a massive issue where they struggled with their capacity to get decent internet, which was impacting the ability for them to send data through their headsets into the mixer through the internet, back to the mixer back in the SEN studio, which I was in Brisbane at the time. And so we were getting massive dropouts. And this is probably fortunate in a sense too, because I was training an absolute superstar, a young star coming through on the desk. And we were told, when you work the NTFL, it's pretty cruisy. I gave him a wink and a nod because I'm like, we're in trouble here. So I had to take some time on the air. I had some ads to burn, thank heavens, because we had a bit of a pre-game. And so we worked our way through that. And eventually we conceded that we were going to get too many dropouts. So I said, all right, there's three of you broadcasters there. You've got a play-by-play, you've got a specials, and you've got another play-by-play. I said, what you do is I'm going to ring someone, and you guys are just going to pass the phone down the line. So play-by-play 1, passed it on to special comments, back to play-by-play 2, which essentially became the changeover. So for those who have been involved in doing dual play-by-plays with the specials in the middle, doesn't matter what sport it is, that's basically how we operated. We kept it simple. So when the specials went on, they passed the phone down the other end, and it basically just passed it up and down the line for full quarters, over 100 minutes of NTFL footy. And the quality was fine. You can hear things just fine. And you know what? We did not have to pull the pin because it took me back to that glory day. And the young superstar that I had with me, I gave him a wink and a nod. I said, we're right here. So that probably reinforces the benefit of getting a chance to do some volunteer stuff as well and learning some of the mistakes that may happen in the tech space, and then just maintaining your composure, learning that. And probably fortunate enough, I was able to take that in the commercial radio space and be that on the desk. And I guess the funny thing was, if you can call it that way, I spoke to some of the techs for SEN around the country, and they probably said, "Oh, we probably would have pulled the pin." And I said, I was so driven that we're not going to have a dropout on my watch, so we continued. So, mobile phone grand final, I had the chance to call it. Just feed that back down the line in a commercial space. So it's not an ideal situation, but you know what? If the quality sounds fine, you're not getting any dropouts, and the people back home or around the country can listen in, that's perfect. That's what more can we ask for? I've got a couple of other ones here. So thanks, Matt, for this question. And these ones will really help. So there was a couple of other RDFNL games. There was one where we had a storm that was brewing around Melton at the time. It was the day that Brendan Favola made his debut for Mountain South in the Ballarat Football Netball League, a very big day. That one, I went over there to Mountain South, watched that game, and then headed over to Arnold's Creek, and the storm just got too much. We couldn't get any signal, not a single thing. We couldn't even get phone signal, couldn't even get anyone in the studio. So we set up the marquee, and we just didn't have any luck. We gave ourselves plenty of time because you try and get there an hour before the game and try and work through your ins and outs and try and make sure everything's connected an hour before time, or maybe 45 minutes before you go to air, just in case there are any issues. We literally had to give up the ghost on that one. And fortunate, because at halftime there was a big storm that came through, and if we hadn't pulled the marquee would have ended up on the other ground, and we would have lost all the gear. So it was a dirty day at the office, but we pulled the pin even before we had to do a game. Before we got the game going. And then there was another one. There was a final out at Romsey, and we speak about weather. And for those who've been in Victoria in the testing season, out at Romsey Park, did the broadcast a semi-final, I think, between the under 18s and reserves. Under 18 and halves, I was with the great man Paul Turner. We were calling the game and holding the marquee while hail was belting down right in front of us. And eventually the wind took a turn and it was just blowing straight at us. So we couldn't do it. We had to move to the other side of the ground where the barbecue was, where there's a bit of shelter. But even then, the hail was blowing in our direction. So we had to make a captain's call for the sake of our own safety with lots and lots of equipment. We decided had to pull the pin on that one, didn't get a chance to do the senior game. And we went straight into the club rooms and sat in front of the heater and tried to defrost after all the chaos earlier on. So, there was 2 occasions which I actually had to pull the pin, probably more OH&S, but we tried everything, and every angle that we moved our table to, we were done. We were on a hide into nothing, so we had to pull the pin. Another one as well, and this is a very, very important one. So in answer to this question, what were some of the most challenging experiences you've had in broadcasting? How did you make it work? We had some tech issues in the 2023 qualifying final, the Q clash between the Gold Coast Suns and the Brisbane Lions over at Carrara, with the great man Kane Browning, who is making big waves up here, called his first ever QAFL Senior Men's Grand Final in 2023. We just called a humdinger of a final down at Broadbeach, and we saddled up and we went up to we went up to the stands, centre wing over at Carrara, magnificent. And we were the big ones in town, the only media covering that one. And we had some issues with our audio where we basically missed much of the first quarter. Kane and I didn't really have any idea that We were in trouble until we had our main producer. We could hear him barreling down the phone going, we haven't had audio all quarter. And Kane's looked at me and I gave him a wink and I just said, look, we're going to get back on at some point, so let's just call. And come the second quarter, things picked up. A great man, Fraser, was calling the shots that day. He was able to make some changes. There was some things that out of his control. And we lost a quarter. We didn't know until probably 5 minutes before quarter time. I think you have that instinct where you get a little bit frustrated, but you just roll with the punches. And you just have to. Because if there are audio issues, just keep going, because you know the tech team is working busily behind the scenes to make it happen. So you don't want to get caught out. If you know that there's a chance you're going to be back on, just call the game. If anything, for your own sake, just for practice. We didn't know when we went back on. We didn't know we went back on until halftime. But we were like, oh, when do we go back on? Oh, at the start of the second quarter. Okay, cool. We could have called 2 quarters. We would have hadn't had any idea. So, and here's my other one. This is probably the most painful story I've ever experienced. I just bought a new phone over at Redlands Victoria Point, the QAFL. This is a big one, ladies and gentlemen, if you are watching, because this you might get tested in the future if something goes wrong. We're sitting in the commentary box. It was Palm Beach, Currumbin, Redland, Victoria Point. Spot it might have been an elimination semi-final in the QAFL Senior Men's Football Competition for AFL Queensland. And I had my phone on the mixer box, and I said to our wonderful camera guy, look, I'll just turn this on. Won't be any dramas. Did not remember that my phone was on there, 3 stories up. I've gone to open I opened the case. The phone's crashed to the ground. This is the phone I've had for a week or 2, if that. I bought it outright, so I spent a few $100. So, and I'm like, oh no, there's my phone, and somebody handed it up, and it was cracked. It was done. It was cactus. The phone was obliterated, and I had to turn the microphone on straight away, and I was livid. In my mind, if you could see smoke coming out of your ears, that was it. I'm like, I've spent $250, $300 on this phone. I didn't have that money to spend. My phone that I've had for 2 weeks is just shattered. And I've just gone, so welcome back here to Victoria Point. And it's a great game here. And just, went on with the show. And I said, by the way, I've just smashed my phone. I'm not happy, but we've got a big game on here. So I had to park that. I had to really bench that, because at the end of the day, the show has to go on. And so you probably remember those things a little bit more. So I'm interested in hearing your experiences. If you're on the socials, please, drop me an email, playbypod@hotmail.com, or via any of the links that you can. I want to hear some of your horror stories. I'd love to share them in the future to see see if you've had some shockers that we'd love to share, because those are the ones you don't forget, do you?